Everybody run to get your pads and pens and get ready for my top 16 best bodybuilders of all time. G'day guys, and welcome to Simply Fit Sweet 16 bodybuilders of all time. So this is a group of bodybuilders that I believe are the top 16 ever. It's a hard group to choose because I love so many of them, but let's get into it. And it's my view only. Leave your comments if you've got any suggestions or people you think I've missed out, or if you want any further for any of these guys. I know a lot about them all. So number 16, we've got Frank Zane. So Frank Zane won the Mr. Olympia 3 years in a row from 1977, 1978 and 1979. He's the smallest Mr. Olympia ever. He only weighed 84 kilos on stage, which is very small compared to the modern era guys, but he was aesthetically pleasing, fantastic physique, very in proportion, all round, awesome condition. To many bodybuilders and fans of bodybuilding, being a three-time Mr. Olympia and just the way his physique looks, he's considered one of the greatest physiques in the history of bodybuilding, just due to his meticulous focus on symmetry and proportion. Number 15 is Gary Strydom. He is a South African, born American. He's the only person to win a championship under Vince McMahon's World Bodybuilding Federation. So he competed for the IFBB, which is the main bodybuilding federation, which still runs today. They defected and went into Vince McMahon's World Bodybuilding Federation. So he weighed 128 kilos on stage. He's 6'2", so he's a taller bodybuilder. I really like his physique. He competed from 1983 all the way through to 2006, which is a long career. He's a fantastic bodybuilder, great physique, and again, being a taller person, I can really identify with him. So Gary won the 1989 Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. Overall, he was a consistent top-tier bodybuilder throughout the 80s and early 90s. Coming up in number 14 is Bob Paris. Again, another taller man, such as Gary Strydom. He was weighing around about 100 kilos on stage. He competed from 1981 through to 1991. So Bob Paris, fantastic aesthetics again, same as Frank Zane. Really conditioned, fantastic poser. Competed in 7 competitions. Won his pro card in the 1983 IFBB World Championships, and then he went on to compete as a professional. He never won any shows as a professional, but he looks fantastic. He competed in 5 Mr. Olympias in 1984, 85, 86, 88 and 89. So what's interesting to note about Bob Paris is in July 1989 issue of Iron Man, which is a bodybuilding magazine, he came out to the media as a gay man. He was the world's first male professional athlete in any sport to come out in the media while still an active competitor in his sport. In that same year, he appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show discussing marriage and being gay. When he was on the show, Oprah asked him, why not just stay in the closet? And he explained how you fall in love and that doesn't feel right to hide it. He's become a symbol for gay marriage and advocate gay rights. He's just a fantastic bodybuilder. I love his physique. And that's why he makes my number 14 on my top 16 bodybuilders of all time. Platz. So Tom's noted for his massive leg development. He was decades ahead of the other bodybuilders in the 80s with massive legs he built. He's known for his mentality in the gym and pushing hard and just pushing his body to the limit and building those huge legs. Tom Platz is an icon in bodybuilding. His nickname is the Golden Eagle. If you're into bodybuilding, he is one of the faces of bodybuilding from the 80s. Tom's highest placing in the Mr. Olympia is in 1981, where he placed 3rd. He is just an awesome bodybuilder, and still to this day he's an icon and helps out the younger generation of bodybuilders. He's one of my all-time favourites from the golden era of bodybuilding, the 80s. So the first of our modern era bodybuilders is Greene. So he was born in 1975 and he is 129 kilos on stage, 141 kilos off season. So this is the size difference between the guys of the 80s and 90s and today's bodybuilders. As you can see, he's known for being one of the best bodybuilding posers of all time. The way he controls his body is fantastic. The muscle-mind connection is out of this world. Greene hasn't competed in an IFBB bodybuilding competition since 2016. So Greene placed first in the 2011 New York Pro. He then qualified for the Mr. Olympia, and he placed second in the 2012 Mr. Olympia, 2013 and 2014 Mr. Olympia. He hasn't competed since 2014 at the Mr. Olympia, although he won the Arnold Classic in 2016. Since then, he hasn't competed for the IFBB. He's still a top tier bodybuilder, and a lot of people say he's the uncrowned Mr. Olympia at this time. We're still hoping he comes back in 2020. It's unlikely. He's moved on to TV and movie roles, and he's got his own businesses. But again, he's a really good bodybuilder and one of my favourites. Greene's been in a number of documentaries. One in 2009 called Overkill. In 2010, he filmed a sequel to Overkill called Redemption, showcasing his training and philosophies for the 2010 Arnold Classic. And then he's featured in the 2013 Generation Iron film, which details the lead up to and events of the 2012 Mr. Olympia competition, where he got second place. He's also featured in the film sequels Generation Iron 2 and Generation Iron 3. Coming in at number 11 is Shawn Ray. He was one of the top 5 bodybuilders throughout the early 90s. Shawn Ray is known as a giant killer. He is only 5'7", but 210 pounds, so about 93 kilograms. He was always in condition. Great posing. He competed in 13 Mr. Olympias. His highest placing being the 1994 Mr. Olympia, where he placed second behind Dorian Yates. In 2001, Shawn Ray retired at the age of 36. He competed in the Mr. Olympia multiple times, but never won the title. He was a top 5 Olympia finalist for 12 consecutive years. So since then, no other bodybuilder has duplicated that feat. So rounding up the top 10 is Australia's own Lee Priest. So Lee Priest started training at 12 years old. He competed for the first time when he was 13 and he won. He went on to win numerous competitions leading up to him winning the IFBB Mr. Australia at 16, 17, 18 and 19. He competed at the World Championships at 17 where he placed 4th, and at 19 he again competed and won the Mr. Australia title, but was not allowed to get his pro card because of his young age. It was then he decided to enter as an amateur in the Niagara Falls Championships, and whilst there he was discovered and given his pro card. He became one of the youngest men to ever turn pro at the age of 20. So then he competed within the IFBB for 16 years. He's quite controversial, he's outspoken. Again, he could have won the Mr. Olympia title, but he fell short a few times. He's won the IFBB Grand Prix in Australia in 2005. He's won the Ironman Pro in 2006, which is probably his most notable win. Lee Priest then decided to retire in 2006, but made a comeback in 2013 and won the NABBA Mr. Universe. I don't think this guy needs any introduction. He would be one of the most iconic bodybuilders ever, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So he was born July 30, 1947 in Austria. He began lifting weights at the age of 15, went on to win the Mr. Universe title at 20, before winning the Mr. Olympia title 7 times. So As standards today, he is the equal fourth most winningest bodybuilder of all time for the Olympias. You've got Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman tied at 8, and then himself and Phil Heath tied at 7. So Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Olympia career, in 1969 he placed second, and then from 1970 to 75 won it. Came back in 1980 to win a controversial win at the Sydney Opera House. It was a very controversial win where he beat Frank Zane, and as a result of that, a lot of bodybuilders boycotted the 1981 Mr. Olympia. It's said that Arnold Schwarzenegger won that Olympia because he was getting ready for his movie title, Conan, and he was given the win. He is one of the icons of bodybuilding, and still to this day is a huge influence in the world of bodybuilding. He was my first introduction to bodybuilding in the 1975 documentary Pumping Iron, where that detailed the lead up to the 1975 Mr. Olympia, where he defeated the incredible Hulk Lou Ferrigno, went on to retire, and then, as you know, came back in 1980. So coming in number 8, so he's one of my all-time favourites from the 90s, Kevin Levrone. They called him the Maryland Muscle Machine. He's one of the only bodybuilders known to grow into a competition. So he'll start off lighter and come in weighing at about 115 kilos in contest weight on stage. So he would do the reverse of a lot of the other guys and just stay lighter in the off-season. Kevin Levrone's competitive career, he won the 1991 Junior Nationals. He got first in the heavyweights. 1992 Mr. Olympia. The very next year, he got second, which was behind Dorian Yates. 1993 Mr. Olympia, he got 5th. 94 Arnold Classic, won that one. 94 Olympia, 3rd. 95 Olympia, 2nd. 96 Arnold Classic, 1st. 96 Mr. Olympia, 3rd. He retired in 2003 after the Showa Strength Pro Championship, where he got 3rd. So Kevin Levrone made a comeback in the 2016 Mr. Olympia, and then he came back again in Australia in 2018. That's a fantastic effort to come back, a bodybuilder from the 90s, an iconic bodybuilder to come back and compete at the pro level again was awesome to see. Kevin Levrone's got his own supplement company called the Kevin Levrone Signature Series. His comeback in 2016 made that company take off. He's now transitioned into full-time within the company and doing very well. Flex Wheeler, or otherwise known as the Sultan of Symmetry, was born in 23rd of August 1965. He won the Arnold Classic, a then record 4 times, and was described as Arnold Schwarzenegger as one of the greatest bodybuilders he's ever seen. Ronnie Coleman has also stated that Wheeler was the best bodybuilder he ever competed against. In 1993, Flex Wheeler won the Ironman Pro Invitational. He got 1st at the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic and 2nd at the Mr. Olympia, so it was a huge debut year for himself. He came 2nd at the Mr. Olympia in 1998 and 1999, both behind Ronnie Coleman. So when Dorian Yates retired in 1998, everybody was saying that Flex Wheeler would be the next Mr. Olympia, but little did they know that there was a freak called Ronnie Coleman just coming in the horizon, where he'll take out 8 wins and deny Flex. But a lot of people say Flex Wheeler is the greatest bodybuilder of all time just for his record. Coming in at number 6 is Dorian Yates. So he's an English professional bodybuilder. He won the Mr. Olympia 6 consecutive times from 1992 to 1997, and thus has the 5th highest ever number of Mr. Olympia wins in history. Obviously behind Ronnie Coleman and Lee Haney at 8, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Phil Heath at 7. He's considered to be one of the top bodybuilders in modern history. He's known for his big, thick back. He's also known for his hardcore style of training, so he popularized the concept of low volume training. He did a documentary called Blood and Guts, which is iconic. A lot of this footage is from Blood and Guts in the black and white, and he would go on record to say that he'd only train it 2 or 3 days a week for maybe 45 minutes at a time each session, but those sessions are high intensity, low volume, and just balls to the wall training. So he's known for his hardcore style. His physique was always on condition. He was known for his grainy conditioning. So he would put the work in his diet and coming contest always in condition. And he's nicknamed the Shadow because he came from England before the time of social media. Nobody would know what he looks like, and he'd come out on the Olympia stage and blow everybody away. So as I said a few times before, we're up to Lee Haney now at number 5. He's the most winningest bodybuilder of Mr. Olympia of all time, tied with Ronnie Coleman at 8 Mr. Olympia titles. He won the Mr. Olympia from 1984 to 1991. During that time, he also won the 1987 Grand Prix in Germany. So that's a bit uncommon, apart from Ronnie Coleman, for Mr. Olympia to win both the Olympia and another competition in the same year. 112 kilograms on stage and 118 kilos off season. So in the 1980s and 90s, bodybuilders would stay lean all year. They wouldn't let themselves get too fat in the off season. Lee Haney retired at the young age of 32. So if he had kept going, he could have had 10 in a row, but he retired young, looked after his family. He got all he needed from bodybuilding and moved on. He's still in the industry as a trainer, and he's on social media and influence to this day. So number 4, we've got Phil Heath, who an argument could be made that he's one of the greatest of all time. That's why I put him at number 4. He has won 7 Mr. Olympias in a row from 2011 through to 2017. He lost the 2018 Mr. Olympia to Shawn Ray, and hasn't competed since then. But this year in 2020 is his long-awaited comeback, where he's going to go for his 8th Olympia title to tie him with Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman. Phil's only 41 years old, so he's still got some years left in him. He had issues with his stomach, with distension, and he seems to have, or says he's got that under control now, so he might be a force to be reckoned with in this Olympia. This year's Mr. Olympia is going to be held in December. It's usually in September, but with coronavirus, it's been moved through to December. So that's going to be interesting. Phil's nickname is The Gift. He's genetically blessed. He's got fantastic muscle insertions, round muscle bellies, always gets in condition. Phil Heath was known to be a bit of a jerk in his younger years, but since he stopped competing in 2018, he seems to have turned that around in the media, and he seems to be a lot better. We'll see what happens if he wins and if his arrogance comes in again, but he has got the potential to win 10 Mr. Olympias. So see how he goes. He's a great bodybuilder. Dexter Jackson at number 3. He is still competing at this day. He's 51 years old and he still looks awesome. Dexter Jackson is the most winningest bodybuilder of all time, winning 29 professional IFBB competitions. He won the 2008 Arnold Classic as well as the Mr. Olympia that year, dethroning the then champion Jay Cutler. So he was Mr. Olympia 2008. He's 168 centimeters tall, and his contest weight is 98 kilos. So he's not one of the biggest guys, but his symmetry, proportions, muscularity is on par. Every time you can guarantee he comes in condition. He's nicknamed the Blade for a reason. In 2018, he finished 7th in Mr. Olympia, and last year he finished 4th. Coming in at number 2 is Jay Cutler. He is one of the best bodybuilders of all time, just like the other guys. He is awesome. He won the Mr. Olympia 4 times, 2006, 2007. He then lost to Dexter Jackson in 2008 and he's done the only thing that any bodybuilder has done and made a comeback in 2009 to reclaim the title. So nobody's done that before, lost to Mr. Olympia, come back and reclaimed it. Phil Heath is going to try to do that this year. So Jay Cutler came back 2009, won, and won in 2010. Jay Cutler is arguably one of the most successful bodybuilders still to this date. He transitioned from active competing to supplement companies. He made a lot of money in real estate. He arguably could have won more than his 4, but he had his rival Ronnie Coleman for many years. On Ronnie Coleman's streak of 8 in a row, Jay Cutler was a thorn in his side, finishing second a number of those years. He's one of the most iconic times in modern bodybuilding history. 2009 Mr. Olympia, Jay Cutler comes out after losing in 2008 and does this dominant quad stomp, which shut the door on Dexter Jackson and put the final nail in the coffin and solidified his win for that year. That photo and that movement is iconic. Now we come to number 1. Not just on my list, but I would comfortably say on most people's list. The greatest ever bodybuilder by far is Ronnie Coleman. He is leagues ahead of everybody else. There's nobody near him. He's a freak. He's awesome. He's strong. He's big. He's won 8 Olympia titles in a row. From 1998 all the way through to 2005, he was dominant. His big background to him, he was a full-time police officer, and he was still full-time in Arlington, Texas for his first 3 wins as Mr. Olympia. So he held a full-time job and was the best bodybuilder on the planet for those 4 years. That's unheard of. These days, bodybuilders are full-time bodybuilding. Ronnie Coleman did both. His heaviest was 300 pounds on stage, which is 136 kilograms. He made a massive leap between 2001 and 2002. He put on a lot of size. Jay Cutler was finishing second to him a number of years, but Ronnie Coleman goes on record to say that Jay Cutler pushed him to be a better bodybuilder, but Ronnie Coleman's just a genetic freak, and he is the all-time best. He's won 8 Mr. Olympia titles in line with Lee Haney, but his reign was through a much harder period of competition with much harder opponents. So guys, as this video is rounding off, I hope you enjoyed the top 16, in my opinion, best bodybuilders of all time. Let me know what you think. If I missed anybody, if you don't agree with any of them, I want to hear your opinions. Can you share this video? Hit the like and subscribe button, and remember, keep flexing.